Welcome to the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, where we celebrate the craft of poetry. Each week, we feature interviews with incredible poets and artists, including Olivia Gatwood and A.E. Stallings, and original poetry read by the authors. I'm your host, James Moorhead, Poet Laureate of Dublin, California, and author of Canvas and Portraits of Red and Gray. On this week's episode of the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, we are featuring poems submitted to Viewless Wings and read by the authors. We love providing a platform for poets to share their words on viewlesswings.com and their voices on the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast. Visit viewlesswings.com to learn more about how to submit your poem for a future episode, or find Viewless Wings on submittable.com. And now we turn the mic over to our first featured poet.
Hi, my name is Durell Carter. I'm a teacher based out of Moore, Oklahoma. I recently got my master's degree from the University of Central Oklahoma in literature. I have a website, durellcarter.org, where you can find more of my poems and other publications. My poem, Midnight Velvetto, is about being able to discuss feelings. And I know it's kind of weird because based on how I grew up as a black man, I was taught not to talk about these issues, not to talk about how I feel, keep a lot of these issues bottled up. This is how black masculinity goes. But I needed an outlet, so I chose poetry, and in this poem specifically, I wanted to talk about how I've been feeling over the past year and a half of, quarantine, and also just dealing with the new emotion I might have with being a dad, and also just being a teacher and just dealing with, real emotions. I just wanted to discuss those issues and discuss what I was feeling with this poem. And I also wanted to discuss my poetry in general. A lot of my poems typically, they deal with issues that are extremely heavy. And sometimes I feel like people only want to hear the heavy stuff. And this is me telling them, hey, no, I can talk more about issues that are happier or more positive and doesn't always deal with pain. I'm not a human that only knows how to feel pain. There's a lot more to me than that. So that being said, this is my poem, Midnight Velvetto. This poem is an act of treason against the religion black men are taught to breathe from at birth. This poem is a wolf that howls in dragons and maneuvers in shades of 2 a.m. Velvetto. This poem doesn't owe you a tragedy and a song written in lamb's blood. This poem has forgotten the faces of the dreams worth knowing, but their inventions still live loudly in all of my closets. This poem was baptized in lakes of buoyancy, but still remembers that the shadows are created by a sun that loves us. This poem doesn't know how to relax its shoulders when doing its best impression to be loving. This poem is a love letter to a home that is still looking for sun limestones as shield to cover its bones. This poem remembers everything and continues to push the red wheelbarrow further into a bloody fog in New Rome anyway.
Hello, I'm Sarah Bitter, a writer from Seattle, where I live with my partner, daughter, and our 2 good dogs. I've had work published in the 7th Wave, Denver Quarterly's Fives, Rivermouth Review, and Slipstream. I finished an MFA at the University of Washington last year. I'm sharing 2 poems, both inspired by concrete art from Latin America. This spring, I had the good fortune to take Leo Bois' online class, Transreading Experimental Latin American Poetries, through the Poetry School. 1 week, Leo gave us a folio of concrete art to consider. I was thrilled by the works, especially the 2 pieces that inspired the poems featured here. You can find links to images of the art on the Viewless Wings website, along with the poems themselves. My first poem, Before the Pool There Was a Saltwater Lagoon, is a response to Argentinian artist and writer Giulia Cosice's Variation in Blue. Variation in Blue is an oil painting, roughly a jagged rectangle comprised of sculptural blue triangles converging in a small light blue circle. Cosice's piece inspired a line of thinking around Coleman Pool, which is a gorgeous 50-meter outdoor pool in West Seattle. Before the pool, there was a saltwater lagoon. Men leave me alone now, mostly, and they have left me at an old blue swimming pool far into a park on the shore of Puget Sound. I have to walk through a forest and down an escarpment to get there. When I think of the men, I think of the blue of that pool, and I am happy, mostly. I like to swim at dawn, when the mist rises off the water and blurs the edges of sea and sky. After I swim, I walk back up the bluff into the cedars, and that smell, humus and trees in full green at the edge of the dry season, is a smell of dying. My second poem, Dear Creature, is a response to Brazilian artist Ligia Clark's Creature Maquette 320. Clark's creatures are a series of hinged aluminum sculptures that have no fixed shape and are designed to be manipulated. The creatures have an organic, lifelike quality, even in static positions. I was attracted both by how they almost literally reflect viewers and by how the creatures seem at once strong and vulnerable. I wrote this poem during the first month of the Russian war against Ukraine and found that thinking about Clark's creatures gave me a way to respond to the war. Dear creature, your sweet metal head rests on the earth like a fawn, left to sleep alone by its mother, except your head is dented. We are very far from the new war, but today your metal hide is armor. Bright yellow narcissus ring my garden as your pelt helplessly reflects the pink and brown of flesh.
My name is David Radavich, and I have published a variety of poetry, drama, and essays. Among my poetry collections are two epics, one called America Bound and its companion volume called America Abroad. Other recent books are Middle East Meza and The Countries We Live In. My plays have been performed across the U.S. and in Europe. My latest collection is called Unter der Sonne, Under the Sun, German poems with English translations. My poem is called Self-Portrait at 20. It is an ekphrastic poem after the painting by Félix Vallotton of the same name. Vallotton was born in Lausanne, Switzerland, but moved as a young man to Paris and did most of his work in France. And he lived from 1865 until 1925 and was loosely associated with the Nabi poets, but never really fit into any particular school. This is his self-portrait at 20. The face is young, pale, turned over the shoulder toward our view, a slight mustache and small, tight mouth, and eyes that bleed just a hint of red, as if about to cry or ask forgiveness. How does he see himself with the chopped ash-brown hair and circular collar like a priest? He looks assured and shy at once, painting himself as if someday he might be significant. This is one who will become. There is sadness and a self-confidence for what the world will bring. The green background favors growth, and the face slightly downward rings an insistent bell.
I'm Mary Amato. I'm a writer, musician, and teaching artist. I've published everything from poems in literary magazines to YA fiction. I'm grateful to have received a number of awards and to benefit from numerous grants that have enabled me to not only create my own work, but to facilitate the work of students of all ages with various nonprofits, schools, and libraries. I believe in the power of writing to uplift and transform, and I love offering workshops, classes, and retreats. I'm also the co-founder of Firefly Shadow Theater, a company that explores storytelling through cut paper, text, light, and the human form. My ekphrastic poem is called You Will Know Us by Our Art. I was visiting the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and I was struck by a display of woolen caps. These caps, each a different color and pattern, were worn by Dutch whalers in the 17th century. They were discovered during an archaeological expedition in around 1980. The museum text that was posted with the exhibition of these caps explained that the reason the caps were each a different color and a different pattern was to help identify the men from afar. I couldn't stop thinking about this, and I wrote this poem about the experience. You will know us by our art. Humbly knitted, rough woolen caps stand in their own glass case here in the Rijksmuseum among the Rembrandts and Vermeers. The caps don't lie flat as if in a drawer. They perch upright, rounded out as if on the heads of their owners, whalers from the 17th century. Varied in color, pattern, and shape, comically tall, serious and squat, tipsy and crumpled, content to be plain, thrilled with stripes, turned at the rim, nibbed at the crown. Each made by someone, a mother, a wife, a daughter, the whaler himself, crafted to keep the wearer warm, and more, to identify the man. Bundled from foot to face against the cold, these sons and husbands and fathers were recognized only by the singularity of their caps. This is why, in the 20th century, these works were found on the white skulls of the skeletons of these men in their graves. Yes, they bear the teeth marks of time, the colors faded, yarn thin here and there. But these wools, shorn, scoured, spun, dyed, and knitted into these forms, triumphed over oxygen's appetite, escaped accidents, indifference, and acts of malice. These caps, worn each cold dawn of life and borne into the deep hold of death, these caps that testified in the dark all those years, these caps are here now, and they still proclaim, you will know us by our art.
Hello, my name is J. Michelle Louison. I'm a Scottish-born poet, now living via London in the coastal beauty of the Netherlands. I write with an unshakable wish for poetic thought, images and vulnerability, and my work has been described as otherworldly, full of nature, emotion and imagined mood. I often write of trauma and its after effects, revealing layers piece by piece. My first chapbook is released in 2022 with Sunday Mornings at the River. And you can contact her on Instagram at Born on a Dark Moon. A gathering. Pale, gnarled rock on sand, softly sleeping. She lays under the squat, ripening suns of dandelion. A leaf carries new life, and hawthorn flowers stretch out like holy rites. I want so much to be here, to let my heart spill out, stale and water-darkened, held by a half-forgotten wolf pelt, and by the moon, seal-eyed and deathless, until it is no longer mine, until my womb is a votive garden, with a new sparrow buried in afterbirth, blind and wet in her palm. A whole world inside me. This poem was inspired by going to a forest close to my home at the beginning of spring and collecting rocks and pine cones and making a small mandala there and seeing all the small plants on the sand soil, and it just brought out this poem. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Nicole Farmer. I'm a writer and teacher living in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm lucky enough to have had my poems published in The Closed Eye Open, The Amistad, Quill Keepers Press, Haunted Waters Press, Bacopa Literary Journal, Cackalack Review, 86 Logic, Wingless Dreamer, among others. I was awarded the first prize in poetry from the Bacopa Literary Review in 2020. And I've just finished my first chapbook entitled Wet Underbelly Wind, which will be published this November of 2022 by Finishing Line Press. I am a graduate of the Juilliard School of Drama, and if you are interested in hearing some more of my poems, you're welcome to check out my website, which is NicoleFarmerPoetry.com. I'm going to read from Honest Sonnets. This is a memoir in verse, and it's a project I'm currently working on. These are 5 poems from this collection, of which at this point I've written about 30, but I don't know how many more there are. So, thank you for listening. Toddler. I was raised in a well, scratchy wool, that smelly tub of a rectangle, butt end of the Volkswagen Bug, where I got to stand and bounce in my sandy feet jammies. No car seat, no belts, just free bumping along from New York City to Vermont, over every pothole or icy lump, nausea overtaking until I slumped into a feline coil, finger-sucking my way to slumber. World whizzing backwards, Mom smoking a joint, Dad in a trench coat, sister biting and pinching me in secretive battle, freezing blizzard leaving me dizzy and excited for more. No wonder every unexpected joy has taken me longer to grasp, maturity late to appear. Backwards, I arrive perfectly in the rear. Scribe. I'm a 9-year-old writing secret messages on my mouth with my thumbnail. Staring straight ahead at my mom, anger like steam blowing out my ears as I bury her with insults written in letters that tickle my lips and calm my rage. Bowie the Beagle sneaks out the back door to follow the scent of a bunny, the tracing of my finger now spelling out words of love for my horse, my special tree, my anywhere else but here, away from the yelling, the shit-eating grin of my goody two-shoes, never get caught sister. In trouble again. Caught. I can escape to my hidden dialogue, stories starring me, the galloping girl who flies high and never falls, no wings needed. Invincible and innocent. Really? Yeah, really. Birthday. Sweet 16 under a giant moonlit crucifix mounted in the center of a dormant volcano filled with tin cans, somewhere close to Antigua, Guatemala. No party dress, no dance, no teenage boys hugging the walls, cigarettes hanging from hungry mouths. I'm crawling on all fours in the mud and rain, laughing with Lorenzo the adventurer, my wheeler-dealer smuggler dad, while elevated Jesus looks down on us with golden tears, blood dripping from his thorny crown and open wounds, as we roll out our sleeping bags. Pop's puking his guts out all night in penance for eating fruit. Not just a father-daughter touristy trip. This was the research phase for the drug deal. Daring. What constitutes a memory? Dad now gone, I simply remember what I remember. True or not, there were only the two of us left at home. Seeing him emerge from the bedroom in full priest habit as Padre Lorenzo, devout traveler between Catholic Louisiana and Catholic Columbia, doing God's work with a friendly smile. Flamboyant Spanish and a love of Central America, its people, its culture. You would never guess he had plastic bags of sugar duct taped under his pants. Practice run for the big smuggle day. Me wondering if this was real or just another deal. Now I ponder his desperation and fear of failure. Invisibility was something he dreaded more than death. Conspirators. I was his eyes, his judge, his confidant. Did his pants catch when he walked? Did he look convincingly chubby? Was his belly believable? Did he waddle like a worshiper who loved to eat? And all I could think about was how his white plastic collar contrasted with the black linen shirt, how shiny his black shoes shone, how much cocaine would be duct taped to his body, and what they would do to him if they caught him. Would I ever see him again? Would I be allowed to visit him in the pen? But this was 1979, and he sailed through customs like a charm, shaking hands, smiling, joking. Playing the priest was a role that far surpassed his Broadway debut. Thank you.
The Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast is written and produced by James Moorhead. You can follow me on Twitter at Dublin Ranch, subscribe to the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, and follow us on viewlesswings.com or on Instagram at viewlesswings.